designing, creating, producing. She had a dream. But she had more than a dream, as Dr. King did too. She had a plan. And the plan was to get the best of British business together, to come together and be honest.
Leila McKenzie-Delis is the founder and CEO of Dial Global and the founder of the McKenzie-Delis Charitable Foundation. Leila is a change agent, entrepreneur, activist, thought leader and champion for equality, diversity and inclusion. In 2020, Leila spearheaded the McKenzie-Delis Review, which is the first diversity survey that looks at how top companies are measuring, tracking and improving on 10 different facets of diversity. Bringing this complex report to life was no easy task, but one she was determined to do despite all the obstacles. Today we'll hear Leila's story of how she became so passionate about diversity and why it's so important for us all to champion this change.
Every single human being, regardless of ethnicity, gender, sexuality, needs to feel that they belong in order to optimally function, both in life and at work. And to feel they belong, they need to be seen, heard and valued. That is just the way it is. My name's Leila McKenzie-Delis and I'm the founder and CEO of Dial Global. Dial stands for Diverse, Inclusive, Aspirational Leaders. And, I guess the business it started just under 2 years ago, born out of my unwavering passion for diversity, inclusion and belonging. As you know, my brother and I are both adopted by amazing white British parents, and mum and dad tried to have kids basically and couldn't, and went out to Hong Kong where mum worked for the NHS as a radiographer and dad worked for a guy called Mr. Mock. I suppose we've been brought up very westernised, if that makes sense. So we went to an international school in Hong Kong and then subsequently moved to Harrogate, which is a very northern town in Yorkshire in the UK. When I think about being in a class of pretty much all white Western children, which is all very lovely, and for me not very different, I suppose, seeing different types of children, but for them it was definitely different. They hadn't seen a Chinese child, I don't think, most of them.
We walked into the most proper Chinese restaurant in all of Chinatown, and I can never remember the name, I only know where it's at. Dude, I take you and your brother in, both of you Chinese by ethnicity. We walk in, you two look at the menu and hand it over to me, and I sit there and order. And the whole time, the waitress kept walking up to us and looking at you guys and asking you questions in Chinese, and me answering, and her being the most confused person on earth at that point in time, just going, what is going on here? You mean these two can't speak Chinese and they're trying to order chips, and this white guy here is responding back to me in fluent Chinese, and he's ordering the Hui Guo Ro? Like, what's going on here? We just crashed the world in one night. It was incredible.
When you're young, you kind of just want to be like the rest of the crowd, and then I think it wasn't until I kind of got older that I realised how being different actually was a bit of a superpower, and being different was a massive benefit ultimately. Hello and welcome to Diverse and Inclusive Leaders, a podcast show where I interview the most inspirational and thought-provoking leaders of today and unearth their unique stories of diversity and inclusion to help inspire, educate and motivate others to make the world a better place. Leadership or leaders, those words aren't reserved these days, in my humble opinion and the team's humble opinion, to those very specific few. Gone are the days when the white ivory towers of leadership and that word was reserved only for those individuals. Actually, in today's modern world, it is about 21st century empowerment of the unrepresented, about those who are different, about ultimately everyone whose voice matters, and everyone's voice does matter. As Lord Simon Woolley once said, it is not a zero-sum game. It's not a case of I'm winning, therefore you're losing. She's winning, therefore he's losing. It's a case of I help you, you help me, we mutually beneficially move the dial in the right direction. Bye. Bye. As a leader, as a millennial leader, I think there is a lot of pressure, certainly from many different external forces, in terms of how we should behave or how we should be perceived in the media, or how our public profiles should look. Actually, it shouldn't really necessarily matter. And sadly, I think it still does. I think we still do judge people by how they look, how they sound, what the caliber of their background is, when in actual reality, whatever background you have, whatever place you came from, if you are doing a great job and making a positive impact, then you should be commended as a leader. The journey to leadership is not perfect. There's no two ways about it. The journey to becoming oneself is no glorified, rose-petalled path that we skip along. It is really blooming tough. It is early mornings, it's late nights, it's often working so much that you fall asleep with your phone in your hand, which is really not something to be proud of. But ultimately, it can be really stressful. And I think leadership today, in particular in the modern world that we live in, is it can cause mental health. It can cause stress. It is so important that we actually take a little bit of time to look after ourselves. But ultimately, it can often be manic. We're working too many hours. We're worrying about such a lot of people. We're worrying about how to make ends meet. Do right for the business. Do right for the people. Do right for yourself. Make sure you balance up family life as well as all of the other things that are often going on personally. Whether it be looking after our family, looking after our children, looking after our fur babies in my case. Really showing our true and vulnerable selves is critical. I say to the team all the time, or they often catch me no makeup on, running around, having just dashed off to make a coffee, mascara half on, whatever, and kind of arriving arse over tail to a morning meeting, and apologising for sometimes being a couple of minutes late because shit happens, basically. And that is that is life, that is business in a modern day era. We aren't perfect. We might have our pajamas on under the screen and no one can actually see them, but as long as we're doing what we're doing and we're doing it to the best of our ability, I think that's really all that matters. Dad always said to me, as long as you try your best, darling, then nothing else matters. I want to plug the report a bit, I think.
Perfect. Yeah, great.
Absolutely, and that's the whole point. It's actually everyone can be diverse. Everyone has a different perception of it.
And the thing is, there is no one definition. That's the big thing. There is no definition because what it means to be comfortable, it means to be
absolutely, and everyone can truly be involved. So I think the interesting thing about intersectionality is, when I first heard the term many years ago, I thought, hey, does that actually apply to me? Intersectionality applies to every single individual. And I would encourage you and everyone else to be thinking about your unique self. What is it that makes me different from every single person on this planet? And how can we and how can I benefit from all of that richness of background? So intersectionality, technically speaking, is an analytical framework for understanding how aspects of a person's social and political identities combine to create different modes of discrimination and or privilege. And ultimately, Examples of those aspects can be everything from gender, sex, race, class, sexuality, religion, socioeconomic background. And that's really why, when we looked at the McKenzie-Delis review, of which we are launching in the States this year on the Fortune 500 as well as the FTSE 500 and beyond, looking at CEOs and other C-suite leaders, so CEOs -2, looking at all of those different areas of intersectionality. How do they combine? How do they interact with one another? How are they relevant for the business, for the individuals, and their wider organisation as well as wider society? Has your upbringing and the way that you developed through childhood to where you are now in your current position, has that impacted the way that you see the world? And how can you harness those powers in order to make positive change? When I first had the idea of the review, I took it to lots and lots of different organisations and lots of people to that point. And so many people said, this is too hard, it can't be done. The reason why it was so important was because there was not one of these in the market, was because we wanted to show the power of all 10 visible and invisible aspects of diversity and inclusion and belonging.
Welcome indeed to the inaugural launch of the McKenzie-Delis Packer Review.
I was really emotional because I think not only had it been a journey of really a lot of self-belief and resilience, picking yourself up after people said, no, it can't work, no, it can't work, no, closing the door in our face and saying, no, I'm afraid this is too different, this is too unique. Actually, it was almost, the chips on my shoulders, the chips on the team's shoulders all fell away, because actually what mattered was us in that moment coming together for collective good and seeing the fruits of our labour come into this amazing virtual reality almost. And I guess this makes me think. It makes me think that no matter how small you think your voice is or how much of an underdog you feel you are, your voice matters. Your voice can and will make a difference if you believe it to be possible. There's always going to be people that say you can't do it. There's always going to be people that say that's stupid or it's never going to work. But believe in that inner voice that tells you that you can do something special, and the power of you being your authentic you can change the face of what happens in business, in wider society. And so it's over to you now to make a difference and to think about how your superpowers can drive the narrative of future business and society in whatever way that is, be it small, be it big. Every little nudge makes a difference and drives us towards our collective goal, and that is a better world for diversity, inclusion, belonging, equality across the board, for each and every one of us to have a voice. So we challenge you as individuals and you as organisations, to take that brave leap into the unknown, but knowing that you can make a difference to the wider world of business and society. What is that one action that you personally are going to take now to change the face of our future?